announcement there.
You're listening to Head South Radio with your host, Kat Meyer, a podcast dedicated to prioritizing pleasure and removing the stigma and shame around sex. We're here to be curious and have an open conversation about sexual health and relational wellness. This podcast is intended for educational and entertainment purposes. The information discussed is not a substitute for professional medical advice.
Hey there, I'm your host, Kat Meyer, and today's episode is part 1 of 2. It's really exciting because it's a best of episode. We launched our podcast last year in February. We now have an archive of about 30 plus episodes, so I've asked my team to share their favorites. We hope you enjoy this episode, and as always, please leave a review on whichever platform you find yourself listening to Head South Radio. Your support helps us grow. Kyle's episode is one of my favorites. I've never met Kyle before our recording, but we overlap in similar social circles in the yoga community. What I appreciated about this episode the most was that it felt so conversational, like I was talking to a close friend. The main topic was the process of dismantling a shared home after a breakup. I was currently going through that, and it was one of the first times I was articulating the unique pain of doing this long after the relationship had ended. Kyle has this special ability to allow space for vulnerability, even through a screen. I often have people telling me how much this episode meant to them. After listening to it, they often tell me that they've shared it with others who are also going through difficult breakups. I feel like it's one of those subject matters that's so universal, and in so many ways, the little bits of what Kyle shares and what I share are so relatable, and you can apply that to different parts or stages of your life or your relational wellness. One of the subject matter I'd like to touch on is cohabitation, because we kind of briefly touched on that of like building a home together, but then also the process of dismantling a home when you break up. So the relational wellness, well-being of building a home. And have you worked with couples? Have you worked with people who were going through breakups? I myself am currently moving, and it's a home that I had shared with a partner who had moved out last year. And that process has been very eye-opening because it's painful. It's like reopening wounds for me of like moving stuff or like looking at things that like, oh, we bought this together, or this is actually theirs. And he had to come back last week and pick up some things that were still in the apartment that I didn't realize were his, or that I was like, oh, this is energetically like feeling like grief in a way that I don't want to hold on to this. And so he came back and got some of his books or pictures for that reason. Like I recognized that I wasn't holding on to them for joy. I was holding on to them out of like fear, grief, sadness. And so it's been a big process. It's something I don't think a lot of people think about or talk about, is like when you build a home together and then there's a breakup and maybe one of the partners stays in the home in the same space. And like I redecorated, I moved some stuff around, I changed it up energetically, but then to go through the process of moving, which you're like, moving is hard. It's like one of the top 5 stressful things people go through in life. But then to move when it's attached to a breakup or grief or sadness. So that's a lot. That I just wanted to share my experience with it right now with cohabitation or dismantling cohabitation. And I just wanted to get your take on like what you do with people when you're working with them, or your own personal experiences with cohabitating with a partner, as well as the dismantling of a home.
Let's talk about the dismantling first, especially since you're in the experience. But I wish that more people would hire me to dismantle, right? It's kind of like you're saying, it's like that shadow space that everyone is just like, oh, let's just throw it in a truck or throw it in a garbage bin manically and be done with it.
Mm-hmm. So I've been packing up this apartment. I knew I was going to be moving maybe a month ago, 2 months ago. It's been a 2-month process now, and like slowly going through everything, because I knew like I have in past moves done that same thing of like moves based off of breakups, moves because it's just a big shift, and being like, and just throwing stuff into storage. And then a year later opening up and being like, what is this? Like, get rid of it. Like that kind of panic mode. And so I kind of intentionally wanted to go through like Marie Kondo it and like touch everything, experience everything. So I've been doing this move for months now, this process. But yeah, I've had to call many friends and my current partner in like moments of full panic like a puddle on the floor moments, because it's just like it hits you like such a hard wave that you weren't expecting. And it's like, this is an old ashtray. Like, I don't, it's just like some random stupid thing. And I like am a mess. It's happened many times over the course of the 2 months now that this has been going on for me. And I'm like processing it.
Well, I mean, so I'd say you have to do that processing at some point anyways. And if you're doing it very consciously, like you're doing, your home is actually, and all of these objects are actually supporting you, because you can see you have that external mirror. And so what you're doing each time you pick up an object, like, I mean, I always really, really warn people, like, drink a lot of water, get a lot of sleep. Like, what you're doing is crazy energetic work. And so each time you're picking up an object, and when you're doing it really consciously with presence, and you're deciding, like, does this go or does this stay, or what is this connection, you're feeling inside. You're doing energy work on your body as well. And it's also really cool that you reached out for support from your friends, because you don't need to be in like a dark closet doing it all alone, like any sort of processing or energy work. And then calling in your partner. I mean, not everyone still has a healthy enough connection that they can do that. And I really suggest, if you don't have that, to create some sort of ritual where you sit and energetically call on the partner and be like, hey, actually, can you take this back? Like, in your mind, or you can speak out loud to the walls. Like, I am going to release this. Sometimes if I feel like the person can't hold it right now, and if you intuitively feel like your ex cannot hold it, then I give it up to that person's like spirit support or their higher self to hold, so that I'm not holding anymore. Like, this is not mine. So I'm going to give this up. And then when that person is ready to process it, it's over in their world. The fact that you were able to actually call the person back in and have that exchange is even amazing. But not to say that that is the only way. But so I think the biggest thing when you are very slowly unraveling is to recognize how much work you're doing in your body. And so it's like, do you need some acupuncture also? Like, do you need, like I was saying, extra rest? Definitely water. Water is one of the biggest things. And just know that this investment in this moment, like, you don't have to do it all. You could throw it in a storage closet and do it later, but you're stuffing it to the side to do later. So this investment in this process is an investment in yourself and in moving forward in your next stage of life, and clearing out now what you are like ready to clear out. And then I never really recommend, I feel like a storage closet is kind of that like blind spot in your mind, and I don't recommend it. But if it has to happen, like, be kind to yourself. Like, okay, this is going to get pushed away for a little while, and kind of make a notation of like, I'm going to check back in 6 months. And if I still can't deal with it, I'm going to check back in 6 more months. But what I don't recommend is having someone else do it for you entirely.
Because then you're not actually processing, you're not doing the work.
You're not, and you don't even have to think of it as like, I almost feel like sometimes when I say you're not doing the work, people can feel a sense of shame. And it's like that tangible picking up the object, like, I know you've just been through it. It's so helpful because you actually, it's a trigger. The energy and the motion comes up to be released or to be digested, or whatever however you're sorting through it. And then if you just throw it all in a bin, it's going to be harder later on to actually feel the different emotions. And so I think it's a really kind thing to do the work in real time, is a really kind thing to do for yourself.
You use the word unraveling, and I think that's part of the fear of doing that work or going through that process is like the fear of like, oh, I'm going to completely unravel, and to be okay with like being a puddle, like allowing those waves of emotions to hit you that you don't want to address, you don't want to experience, but allowing yourself to be hit with those waves, but then also having lifeguards, like support systems and things that like, oh, here's my buoy. This is like, I'm going to go get a massage after I do this series in this room, going through these things, and really take care of oneself through that process to set yourself up to get through it versus like, I'm just going to dive in headfirst, even though that sign says shallow, and like hope for the best. But it's like, no, if you have lifeguards, if you have people in your life who, like my mom is one of them, my dear friend Bonnie, my current partner now, and my ex, like we're all very understanding of like what I'm going through. And I explained this to all of them. And so they know, like they got calls early in the morning and late in the evening when I was trying to do this in between working and sleeping. Very, very supportive and understanding. And so, it's absolutely vital in these processes of dismantling and unraveling so that you don't fully unravel. And that the fear is like, I'm not going to get through this, is to have the support.
Yeah, I love the term lifeguards.
Yeah.
But it's also be really honest. Like I'm a deep swimmer. Like I can be underwater for an extended period of time, literally and metaphorically. And if you're not a deep swimmer, do it in really small bits. I often tell people set a timer. 45 minutes work and then have something go outside right afterwards or have something to change the scenery, lifeguard support, something to bring you back up to surface.
Yeah. With people who can't, I too can, I trained as a child, like swimming. I was a competitive swimmer. And so distance swimming, no breathing was a big part of it. And like breath work was a big part of my childhood. And also just being a Cancer, I can sit for long periods of time in emotions. But when you don't have that, when you don't have those traits, when we talk about lifeguards, I think even just to your point of like, don't have someone else do it for you, but maybe you might have to invite a best friend, a family member, someone to come over and help you go through that process. Sometimes that part of the process that you can like, who also validates the fact that you might be unsure, like it's okay, like let's put it in the maybe pile for now, like helps you kind of move through that process and validate your experience. Even like your resistance to the experience is very helpful for people who might be uncomfortable being alone in that, like just going through that process. Like I could do it alone, but I had moments where I had to like call the landline. But for others, if you understand and know that like, hey, I can't go this deep, sometimes you might have to ask your lifeguards to come with you and do that like short incremental, then going for a walk, getting an ice cream, doing things outside to breathe and to process in a different way, I think, and digest it.
Yeah, and you bring up breath work and energy work. I also teach breath work and energy work in the sense of, well, all senses, but one big aspect of that is being, I know we talked about this before, being emotionally available to yourself and increasing your capacity to be emotionally available to yourself. So I'm not saying you need to go do breathwork classes to break up with your partner, but you might want to pick up a few breathwork classes just to, in that time or forever, but have a regular connection with your breath, because that helps you, as you know, move the energy through you, experience it, and then move it out. It's not you're unraveling and you're going through your belongings and stuff, but it's not for you to stay there forever. It's not for you to stay in the permanent state of that memory or that energy.
Our editor Megan chose Gay's episode. I loved Gay's episode because I think the way he treats his wife is aspirational, doing things for her before she wakes up, positive affirmation verbally, as well as through physical actions. I found it to be the moment that struck me the most emotionally and made me examine how I could be a better partner in my own relationship. Breaking it down into simple things, this is amazing because it allows anyone reading his books or listening to him speak to see it through the lens of their own life and reflect on their own practices as someone participating in a variety of relationships, friendly or romantic.
I met Katie, And we had this amazing first conversation where when I met her, I had the urge to ask her out for a cup of coffee, but I just had this big realization the month before. And so I said to her, I'd like to ask you out for coffee, but I've just realized that I mess up relationships by either not being honest about my feelings or not taking responsibility and blaming the other person. Or I said, there's a third way I mess up relationships. And by getting into relationships with people that aren't as passionate about their creative path as I am about mine. I'm a writer. I go in a room for 2 or 3 hours a day by myself. And if the other person has creative passions, they understand that because they've got those passions too. But if a person doesn't understand that, it looks like I'm checking out of the relationship for 3 hours a day, but to me, it's sacred time. So I said, I want to be in a relationship where both people are passionately committed to their own creativity. And so I said, on those terms, would you like to have a cup of coffee with me? And her eyes kind of rolled back in her head for about 10 seconds. And then she said, yeah, how about lunch? And so that was 44 years ago. And now we're still together. It's been the most amazing ride, now to have spent, 2/3 of my life on earth married to the same person. You get a depth and richness learning about the other person, but also learning about yourself that, you really can't get any other way. And it's really the best game on earth. It's the best thing to do is to make your life be about your relationships, both with yourself and with another person. Because if you do that, you'll always be focusing on, how can I have the highest quality experience with myself right now and with people I'm in relationship with? We have to have 2 commitments. One is a commitment to develop as individuals, and the other is a commitment to develop as couples or as people in relationship, not just romantic couples. Both of those are key commitments because human beings have a twin urge to do both of those things. We have the urge to merge and the urge to individuate. Both of those need to be honored. So if there's one thing I hope your listeners and viewers will really get a deeper understanding of, is nurturing that deep sense of need to individuate, to have my own creative path in life, and also the urge to be in complete harmony with another person while I'm expressing that creativity. So to me, that's life at its best. You can be wounded on the individuation stage, and then you try to make that up by kind of forcing yourself into relationships. I stayed single from 72 to late 70s because I don't think I trusted myself to get into another close relationship. I think I stayed, kind of like, I always say I kept the back door open. I never really made a commitment to anybody because I had that back door open for if I needed to make a quick escape. So fortunately, I used that 7 years of being single to do a lot of work on myself. And one thing I found, wow, was this a big deal? I think a lot of men have this problem, but I know I did growing up at the time I grew up. Men at that time weren't supposed to have feelings. You were supposed to be the strong, silent type. I never saw any male member of my extended family ever shed a tear. That blows my mind now because everybody in my family, my kids and everybody has seen me cry plenty of times. And I'm shocked now looking back that everybody kept their emotions so concealed. So I had a lot of learning to do, like just to be able to say simple things like, I feel angry right now, or I'm sad, or I'm scared. Those are easy things for me to say now because I've worked on myself and identified where those feelings are so I can be in touch with them. But rolling the clock back, 40 or 50 years, I didn't know any of that. I was like cut off from the neck down. I was very smart, but I didn't know how to use any of those smarts to really be more self-aware. And a number of women in my 20s that I would go out with during my single phase, they would say something to me like, you never say anything about yourself, or you never say anything about how you feel. And when they used to say that to me at first, I would say, oh gosh, I don't even know how to speak that language, and gradually though, it was very helpful to me. I learned there were 3 zones of my body that when I got feedback from them, like tension, that meant there were emotions present. Like if my shoulders and the back of my neck were tight, that meant I was angry and hadn't said anything about it. Okay, so that was a big learning. If my chest felt constricted or cloudy or a lump in my throat, that was sadness. And it was usually kind of a feeling down in my chest, a longing feeling or a kind of a tugging sensation. But when I felt that, I learned to say, I feel sad right now. I'm not sure why, but I feel sad. Then also fear. I was completely cut off from my fear. And to the extent that when I was scared, I used to overeat. And I didn't realize it. It was because I was feeling scared or lonely or cut off from the world. I would try to make it up by stuffing myself. Interestingly enough, nature has designed our bodies. God bless nature, but our fear mechanism is right next to our hunger mechanism in our belly. You feel butterflies in your stomach when you're afraid, and you feel hunger pangs when you're hungry. So no wonder so many of us stuff ourselves when we're feeling scared or lonely, thinking that's hunger. And I really had a lot to learn there about just letting myself feel my feelings rather than trying to make them go away, by eating or exercise or something, just to let myself feel what I was feeling. That was a huge learning. I mean, it literally took me years to get good at that. But now, once I got into my relationship with Katie, we made some agreements with ourselves that really helped. Like here in this relationship, it's okay to feel. If you're angry, I want to hear about it. If you're sad, I want to hear about it. If you're scared, I want to hear about it. So we made agreements with ourselves that it was okay to share our feelings no matter what they were with each other. You'd be surprised at how many couples, we've worked with, I think, close to 5,000 couples now. And you'd be surprised at how many of those folks come in with a mindset that they've got to keep their feelings hidden from the other person rather than revealing to the other person. And that's a troublesome problem because so many people, when they leave a relationship, they say, he would never tell me who he was, or I could never find out what she was feeling. It was all hidden down there. Another thing that we do in our relationship too is we make a point, Kat, of really celebrating each other, appreciating each other. Like already this morning, before I came in here to record this, I'd already said 2 or 3 appreciations to Katie, and she'd only been up a half an hour. I'm an early riser. I wake up around 4:30 or so. And so the first few hours of my day is when I get a lot of my writing done. Katie likes to sleep in until 7:30 or 7:45. And so, but I make this point because even though she'd only been up a half an hour, I'd already found 2 or 3 things to appreciate in her about me too. And so you want to keep the relationship environment rich with appreciation, really rich with spoken appreciation, particularly. One of the things we do oftentimes in a first session with a couple is say, could you say one thing to your partner that's appreciative? This design, and I remember this one guy says, I'm here, aren't I? That was the most appreciative thing he could come up to say. But, most of the times we don't get very good at training in how to communicate our feelings to the other people, or how to express appreciations. Or wouldn't it be great if as first graders and second graders or kindergartners, we could learn things like how to solve a problem without making somebody wrong, or how to communicate deep feelings to another person without making them feel bad. Wow, that would be a genuinely useful school. I've actually visited schools where they do that, but they're few and far between. I'm a big believer in education. If we can do things with education early in life, a couple of my original books were in the field of education because I saw that, boy, if we could really make some of these differences happen in the classroom, people wouldn't need to spend their hard-earned pay in their 20s and 30s on therapy.
Our editor, Megan, chose Crystal's episode, which was something she never thought she'd have interest in, lingerie. Megan wrote, "By the end of it, I was totally floored by how impactful lingerie can be. The story about her helping the woman in the fitting room was eye-opening. Truly an incredible story about helping someone feel confident, comfortable, and beautiful through garments. This, of course, couldn't happen without Crystal's approach to it, helping a stranger and allowing them to be vulnerable like that. It's clear Crystal knows how to practice relational wellness by how she treats others, and that's a perfect example in my book of one of Head South's goals, treating everyone with love and making space for people."
Yeah, the one that the experience that I was talking about with you was actually I started in lingerie when I was 21. I'm 36 now. And that was one of my first experiences because up until then I was just kind of learning what the whole world was. And you're 21, you can like put anything on your body and you just feel like $1,000,000. You know what I mean? So I hadn't really broached the emotional part of it. And my first job in lingerie was a heavy hitter. It's agent provocateur. So I learned quite a bit there, which was awesome, but it is a whole world that they create. I mean, they are considered the sexiest lingerie in the world, and it's very luxury. They put the time and attention to every garment the way someone would in couture. So I was still kind of in that very surface level of like, oh, this is just pretty. This is so pretty, and then I got this couple come in and it totally flipped me around in a good way. It was a couple who she just had a child and she wasn't not just, I mean, like within like 6 months, so it's pretty recent. What you could tell by the dynamic when they were walking around that she was, intrigued by everything, but not necessarily as enthusiastic as her husband. And her husband was being very supportive. And so he was kind of encouraging her like, "Oh, that would look great on you, and this would look," she had this gorgeous red hair, very like Nicole Kidman style red, and you're just like, "Oh," he was like, "This color would look great." So kind of trying to get her into that. And so she went into the fitting room semi-reluctantly, and I helped out. And when she was inside there and I was, she looked incredible to me and everything, she just broke down and started crying. And he could kind of hear what was going on, and she just opened up in this, like, incredible way of just, like, "I don't feel like myself anymore. I'm trying to do this for him, but I want it to, but I don't know." And then he kind of I excused myself to go get her a tissue, and I think I got her champagne. I was like, "Do you want champagne?" But, like, just let's, I don't know. I'm 21, so I was definitely having fun with champagne. I remember him coming in and making her feel a lot better, but like kind of soothing her and letting her know, like, I just want you to see who you are, not just who you were. You're still this person. And it just completely blew my mind. First of all, their dynamic was incredible, but it was also just this tender moment that I was getting a glimpse into, and it had all happened because in the fitting room of a lingerie store that I thought was just supposed to be fun and cute and pretty, and I just realized all of these layers of emotions that were attached to it, of her trying to find her way back to who she believed she was, the parts of herself that she believed she was that she liked, and him trying to show her that that's never left. And they were doing that through, a corset fitting. And so it totally changed my perspective of what my role was in that moment. And also just the impact of what lingerie could do, and how a couple can find this, this tender moment in that. And so, yeah, that has always stayed with me. And then I have several other stories of women coming in just on their own and, talking to me about how just the physical shape of their breast have changed from breastfeeding, C-section scars, not gaining or not losing the weight that they had initially gained, and feeling, self-conscious about that. And some women feeling the opposite, feeling like, I always wanted to have, this extra bit, and now here it is, and I'm going to show it off. And this is, my scar, and this, I don't care. I'm a mother, I'm a warrior. So it's like you see this range, but the common thread is there is this disassociation from your body, whether positive or negative, that I am now this. And, personally, even just going through this pregnancy, I'm at 5 months, I definitely have felt those, my body is not mine right now. Like, it is and it isn't. I have to be more cognizant of my roommate, and it also changes the way I see lingerie. I've totally sized out of a lot of the lingerie that I have. I'm having to wear things that I wouldn't normally wear that are truly for function. And it does make you feel different. It's making me feel not as close to just that, the frivolity that I used to have when it came to lingerie, when it came to dressing, even in the morning, when it comes to just relating to my husband. So much of my body is changing to where it's like, oh, this, I don't feel like being touched, the way I did before. And then sometimes I absolutely need to be close and tender. And so it's like these crazy pendulum swings where I felt like before, again, there was like a frivolity to it. So yeah, it's definitely a journey of having to, because I know, I'm aware of this movie as it's happening, of bringing myself back to that center and reminding myself, like, no, I am still the person that I've always been. We were talking about just even maternity wear and how Rihanna is like, just totally changed the game again, reminding myself to like harness that, inner Rihanna, or actually Beyonce is my queen. So it's also just harnessing, whatever tool I need to remind myself that that's not gone away. It's maybe dimmed a little bit, but it's not gone. And having that support from, I have these awesome, badass lingeristas around me that shake me out of it when I feel like I am not the person I was. Instead, they remind me that I am still the same. My body is doing incredible things right now, and it's just a different phase. But you are still able to express yourself through what I've always loved, just as much as I did before. And in that moment, that couple really set the tone for the rest of my career.
Special thanks to all of our guests. Head South is hosted by Kat Meyer, produced by Isis Barlow, edited by Megan Hook, with music by Lily Rezi Rothman, graphics by Ella Chodos Irvine, cover art by Gina Ship Casey, and intro by Murph Meyer.
If you're looking for me, I'm heading south. All year round, I'm going down. Now you know where I'll be, I'm heading south. So come on, look me right